Boneworks, the de facto king of ambitious, future-forward VR gameplay, has this moment towards the ending where the player is tasked with climbing, well, a really tall ladder. Narratively, there isn't anything particularly interesting going on at this point. To be honest, I wasn't invested in the story whatsoever. I was getting tired of the gameplay and just hoping that things would wrap up soon. Really, I'd already seen all the tricks that this game had up its sleeve, and I was ready to go back to waiting for Half-Life Alyx to come out. My character was invincible. The only challenge of the previous final boss was to simply roleplay my character struggling and avoid using cheesy tactics. All the other enemies were so mindless and predictable that I was hardly even parsing them as a threat. In other words, I wasn't immersed at all, even though I was inside the game. Then, I saw this great big ladder in front of me, and I just groaned. This was going to be exhausting. I could already feel the sweat soaking into the foam padding of my headset. My feet were getting sore, my posture was getting worse and worse. I just wanted to climb this stupid ladder, finish the game, and take off my headset for a couple of months. I started climbing inch by inch up this gigantic wall, struggling with the janky controls without a single emotion on my face save for exasperation. Then, something happened. No singular moment during the climb caused it, but my emotions suddenly shifted to pure excitement. This was it. After a game filled to the brim with completely non-threatening enemies, a total lack of consequences for mistakes or failure, and a final boss who could only kill you if you went out of your way to play along with the fight scene, suddenly I was facing real adversity. I wasn't doing anything difficult, I was just climbing a ladder like I've done in real life hundreds of times, but if I messed up, I'd have to start all over again. Finally, some tension. This ladder proved to be more intimidating an enemy than 100 mindless zombies, with or without guns. This was it. This was the VR moment that I'd been waiting for all this time. Like I said in the beginning, for all the problems that I might have with Boneworks, there's no denying that it strived to push the medium of VR to its limits, and some would say it did. It was incredibly ambitious, and while most of that ambition did kind of fall flat for me, this simple ladder made me more immersed and more emotionally involved with the game than almost any other example I can think of in any game, VR or otherwise. My body was exhausted, my arms were starting to hurt, my neck was getting stiff from staring upwards for so long, but I just had to keep pushing through it. I couldn't put the controllers down or pause the game or anything. I'd fall if I tried to. I just had to keep pushing, after having played for much longer than was probably healthy, and fight through the exhaustion of a sedentary gamer forced into doing something physical for way longer than she was used to. This might be more of a testament to how out of shape I am than anything else, but the point stands that I was into what was going on at that moment. I was really immersed. I couldn't even tell you what was going on in the actual story at the time, but for those brief moments climbing that ladder, I was truly in the game. I've had a lot of emotionally intense moments in games. My VR suicide at the end of The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, the pure emotional roller coasters that tied up games like Death Stranding or Planescape Torment, saying goodbye to characters that I'd been playing as for months in New Vegas or Half-Life 2 RP, mastering super difficult games like Doom Eternal or Counter-Strike. But I can hardly think of any moments across my decades of gaming that paralleled this one, simply because my own physical exhaustion was being used as a narrative device. I have no idea what was going on with my player character in the story. I don't know what he was actually accomplishing by climbing this ladder, but whatever story the game did have was made 100 times more profound by simply making me experience a bit of pain at the ending. Then something occurred to me. Games have been doing this for a really long time. I'm talking, of course, about button mashing sequences. I've been getting my girlfriend into the Metal Gear Solid series lately, and I can't think of a single series that does such a perfect job at taking advantage of this unique tool that games have at their disposal. For games that are so rich with meaningful gameplay decisions, amazing narratives, mind-blowing, and, in my case, sometimes life-altering core messages and themes, these simple moments where all I'm doing is pressing a single button as quickly as I can tend to stick out in my mind as some of the most memorable moments in the whole series. In fact, I'm willing to bet that if MGSV had a button mashing sequence, people wouldn't talk about that game like it was incomplete. These moments do everything that Boneworks was doing with that ladder, working my own exhaustion into the themes of the game and using it to elevate my connection to my character's struggle. Only in these games, I was already emotionally invested in the characters. I didn't really care what happened to Arthur Ford, but I really wanted to see Raiden overcome his struggles. MGS2 has a particularly special case with this. See, if you've played most versions of the game, you probably remember the button mashing sequence being really, really hard. You have to mash super quickly for an incredibly long time. As someone who's played this game a dozen times, this button mashing sequence is practically the challenge that makes all other challenges seem easy by comparison. That final fight with Solidus has absolutely nothing on this, and that's not even all of it. In the original release of this game on PS2, this button mashing sequence apparently lasted for 90 whole seconds. I don't care if MGS2 is the only game you've ever played. If you can mash that hard for that long, you're the best gamer I know, period. Of course, this is immediately preceded by the other most mentally strenuous part of the game, in which the player takes on up to 20 Metal Gears one after the other for 10 minutes straight. What this all adds up to is you feeling mentally and physically exhausted just in time for the Patriots to take advantage of your weakened mental state to fill your head with as much propaganda and subliminal messaging as possible. You're not even thinking after this. All you know is that it's time to do whatever the game tells you and kill Solidus. The game pushes your conviction to its absolute limit before tasking you with killing a guy whose death hardly even matters, all to make a point about how Raiden has been brainwashed through his whole life, with the exact aim of creating this response at this moment. Similarly to how Hotline Miami trains your brain to go on autopilot to make a point about how our character dissociates from his violent massacres, MGS2 uses your own physical exhaustion and your own mental exhaustion to make you dissociate from your character's actions. And wouldn't you know it, much like how the aftermath of a Hotline Miami level is often a blur and you don't really even remember what you did to kill all these guys, I barely remember any of the techniques to beat Solidus after playing and replaying this game to death. In short, button mashing sequences can be a really great way to take advantage of the player's own limited stamina to draw them into the parallel struggle of the player character of a game in a fun, memorable, and immersive way. However, some games simply don't understand how best to capitalize on that tool. For every tough Yakuza boss fight that ends with you mashing a button to charge up one final, satisfying attack, there are games that completely miss the mark and break away from the traditional rules of gameplay to deliver moments that just make you roll your eyes and think about how you'd rather be watching a cutscene. Enter David Cage. While I generally avoid talking about media that I don't like on this channel, I think it's important to juxtapose the good with the bad so that we can establish where the line is, what separates extremely memorable moments like MGS2's button mashing sequence from press F to pay respects. So with that out of the way, David Cage is a narcissistic, homophobic, and misogynist hack screenwriter who managed to creep his way into the games industry back when the standards for game writing were about as low as they ever got.
That guy just forced his way into Lawrence Place. Sounds like the room's getting rearranged, and not in a good way.
He's a self-described visionary who's spent his entire career elevating the medium of games to new heights, when really, well, Yahtzee puts it best.
You can recreate the exciting interactive narrative experience by watching any normal film and pressing the pause button every 2 seconds.
I could write a whole video about how atrocious the writing and direction in these games are, but it's kind of outside of the scope of today's video. Why does an interaction as simple as mashing Y seem so awesome to me when these complex, insanely high production value QuickTime events just make me groan time and time again? It's because we're forgetting what might be the most important rule of designing a story-heavy game like Heavy Rain or Metal Gear Solid. If something would be better as a cutscene, make it a cutscene, and if something would be better as gameplay, make it gameplay. MGS2 has this one moment where we quickly snap out of a cutscene so that we can equip our AK so as to not blow our disguise. Then it goes straight back into the cutscene. It's this surprisingly effective moment where you have to quickly put your drink down and fumble for the controllers before time runs out, which of course parallels with Raiden trying to avoid blowing his cover after he's essentially already been caught. Juxtapose this with 100 equivalent moments during Heavy Rain where we can't progress until we shake the joystick around to brush our protagonist's teeth, or casually close a car door, or stand up from a chair. It's completely mind-numbing. You're sitting there trying to enjoy the cutscene and pay attention to the story, but the game demands that we split our attention between thinking about a complicated murder mystery and playing Simon Says. In fact, in his previous game, Indigo Prophecy, it is literally Simon Says. Long story short, in short bursts like the disguise scene in MGS2, these moments where a bit of gameplay is injected into a cutscene makes us more immersed in the role and struggles of our character, and if those same design principles are used constantly, all it does is tire you out and signpost that the game thinks its stupid joystick gestures are more important than the story, thus absolutely destroying the immersion and the whole experience. Getting up from a chair is not supposed to require conscious thought, David. So we've talked about how amazing this stuff can be if used to put you in the shoes of your character and let you relate further to their trials and tribulations, but it can also serve as a really great fourth wall break.
Don't even think about using auto fire, or I'll know.
Non-diegetic interactions like button mashing are really great for when you want things to get a bit meta. This is probably what Boneworks was going for with that ladder in the beginning of this video. There are few things in media as creepy as a game suddenly acknowledging the player in an unexpected way. Everybody gets thrown off when Psycho Mantis changes the channel on your TV during his boss fight. As a fun little aside, did you know that during development, Hideo Kojima wanted to coat the MGS1 CD with a substance that the PS1 would heat up during the Psycho Mantis boss fight, causing your entire room to smell like blood? Obviously, that wouldn't have been safe, but it's really cool. Anyways, acknowledging the player is exactly what MGS1 is doing with Ocelot saying, "Don't use auto-fire or I'll know." He's not talking to Snake, he's taunting you, the player. And as funny as it is at face value, when you surround it by the meta context of the rest of the Metal Gear games, it gets kind of creepy. Especially since Ocelot warns you that there are no continues here. If you fail, that's it, the game goes back to the main menu and you have to load a save. Then you've got this awesome little submit button up here also taunting you. If the mashing is too much and you haven't saved in a super long time, you might resort to surrendering, resulting in Ocelot killing Meryl, one of the best characters in the game. Every single part of this scene is set up to put the pressure not on Snake, but on the player themselves. So you bet your ass that everyone who plays this game mashes like crazy when they get to this point. You mash until your arm hurts and then you keep going. And then shortly after, Snake complains to Naomi that his arm hurts, and so she increases the painkiller supply in his blood, telling you to put the controller on your arm where it hurts and vibrates the controller to help ease the pain so you can keep mashing. It's really clever. And moments like this lead people like me to coming up with wild theories about whether or not the player is a real thing in the context of the game's story. Like, am I, Penelope, sitting in my living room with a PlayStation controller canon to the story of Metal Gear? I don't think the answer really matters, but it's questions like that that make fourth wall breaks and meta stories so interesting and engaging. They just trigger different parts of your brain than other types of stories, and no artistic medium is better at being meta, or postmodern, than video games. Button mashing sequences are just another tool in the game designer's toolbox. Yeah, you can do basically everything with a screwdriver, but you won't exactly be doing it well. However, used correctly and in conjunction with other tools, a screwdriver can be just what you need to make your project perfect. And the same applies to every other game mechanic, narrative element, visual effect, or anything else you can think of. Bloom can be used to make an entire game look awful, or it can be used to make blowing up a scarab in Halo 3 the coolest thing that's ever been in a game. Text documents can be used to slow your game's pacing to a crawl and prey on those with hyperfixations, or they can be used to make you feel like an elite agent hacking into top-secret government servers. Dialogue trees can be a boring, character-breaking sidetrack to say every possible thing to someone, or they can be a really great chance to develop something that you want in your character. And button mashing sequences can be a mind-numbing tedium or an amazing opportunity to put the player in the character's shoes. No game mechanics, save for NFTs, are inherently bad, or even good. It all depends on the context of the game and the execution of the mechanic. So I'd encourage you to play some games you haven't played in a while and reflect on the clever ways that devs have used mechanics or systems that you don't normally like to deliver fantastic high points in the gameplay. I think you'll be really surprised by how clever a lot of game designers can be. Before I close out this week's video and get to making a video about why my videos take so long to make, I would just like to go ahead and verbally thank the patrons as always, especially those who donate $10 or more monthly. At this point, it is very, very, very apparent to me that I would not be able to do this without you. So, those patrons are I Don't Know, Fox11 Honey, Tiggy, Ellie B, Marshall Nye, M. Coy, Rebecca F, Ayla Scott, Cappy, Lake, Mina, Batty Matty, Trashcan Teddy, Random Sageless, Super, Even Knight, Panda, Mr. Coca-Co, Shay Theus, Swatchbox, Nomad Delilah Jester, Cass, Stelly, Bjorb, Lily Leons, Neris, Michaela, Olive Martini, Franz Johannes Fuellner, Sean Hamilton, Monkey Monk's Monkey Monastery, Haunted Mystic, Charlotte, Yas the Boss, Holly Schmidt, Evie, Rio, Laura M, Poof Donut, Finboy Fishing, Atheat, Joannis, IW, Arda Aurelius, Cornelius Nelson, Demise, Mia Maple, Nicole, Ada Avery, Neurofilter, The Coomb Slayer, Summer Celine's Garnet Midnight, Dominic Johan, Big Time Jim, Dennis Vashakamer, Almost Dead Again, Jonas, Gab, David Kaiser, Gerard Drake, Erica, Darius Fazier, Lil Bunda, Maria, Alex Zenla, and CeeLo. I know that I've been teasing an MGS2 video lately, but don't worry, this was not it. There will be a proper MGS2 video at some point, hopefully in the near future, but with that said, I hope everyone has a good week.